Welcome, everyone, to Diversified, where our mission is to have you live a life filled with wealth, health, and happiness. Today, we have a very special guest, the impressive Shannon Petrovich. Shannon is a therapist, author, and YouTube creator that specializes in helping people deal with and recover from toxic relationships. She has a new book that is a #1 Amazon bestseller, Out of the Fog and Into the Clear, and our YouTube channel offers insights and strategies to help people cope with mental health issues. Thanks for joining me today, Shannon.
It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you. So tell me about your story. So what got you into this world of mental health coaching, and then more specifically the toxic relationship?
Yeah, after I went to grad school and came out, I was a therapist in many different venues, inpatient, outpatient, private practice. And about 5 years ago, I realized that sharing the insights and strategies that I've learned over 35 years, one person, 1 hour at a time, just wasn't very satisfying and fulfilling when there are millions of people in the world that have no access to any kind of mental health information. So I started the YouTube channel, Therapist Talks, and I jumped right into a lot of different issues. But what people most wanted to hear and were most concerned about were their relationships, and especially narcissistic and abusive and other toxic relationships. So that ended up being the thing that I focused on the most, done lots and lots of videos on them. And then I felt like I needed to pull it all together into a book to really help people walk through the process of getting well. Because again, so many people don't have a therapist to help them through that. So it's kind of a self help journaling oriented book that really brings together all the strategies to help you look at and assess and then work through and deal with and heal from a toxic relationship.
Okay, that's great. And I would imagine that through COVID, there's been an uptick in this, right? People stuck at home. I mean, anecdotally, I feel like I've seen that. Have you?
Absolutely. My practice just escalated exponentially. It's always been busy, but then it
Right.
became extremely pressured, and that again is why I wanted to share more on the internet. And with all these technologies, you can use them for good.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. So, okay, since you have a specialty that is foreign to me, and I hope your answer isn't when I ask this question, it's because you're married to Andrew, but help someone, someone that's watching this today. What are the signs that you are in a toxic relationship?
Good question, because a lot of people are very confused by this. And part of the problem is that a narcissist or other toxic person is all about themselves, and they are all about control and manipulation to get their needs met. And so it's sort of like a hot air balloon that has to be constantly puffed up um, with hot air in order to be inflated. And if it's not inflated, that internally collapses and then it explodes. So that's kind of a good analogy for a person like this. So if you feel like your thoughts, feelings, needs, wants are not really heard or honored, or and maybe don't even exist in this relationship, then it's probably something that's very toxic. If you feel more and more depleted over time, if you've been isolated from your people, if you feel like you're crazy, if you feel depressed and anxious all the time, if you're constantly monitoring their moods, their emotions, their behaviors, and you're people pleasing, placating, and peacekeeping to try to keep everything afloat, you're probably in a toxic relationship.
Okay, it's helpful. So now I would imagine there is some sort of spectrum here, right? From
Mhm.
extremely toxic to minor toxic. Just because you're in a toxic relationship, does that mean it's doomed for failure, or are there ways that people say, "Look, I love this guy or gal, and I think this can be salvaged"? Are there ways that these toxic relationships can come out and grow and actually be better on the back end?
Absolutely. I think the most important thing is that you learn to notice your own feelings and thoughts and wants and needs. And then you learn to set boundaries with the other person and you learn to fully exist in the relationship. Because we get lost in patterns of people pleasing and placating. And when we're doing that, we're actually not telling the truth in the relationship. We're saying, oh, it's fine when it's really not fine. We're saying it's okay when it's not okay. And when we stop doing that and we start telling the truth and setting boundaries, then we get to see whether the relationship can grow or whether it is doomed. If it can grow, the person goes, oh, wow, I didn't know that. And they ask you more and they want to know more and they want to work with you to work it out. If it's doomed, they escalate and they pressure you more to be all about them. And they manipulate and control and they bring out more tactics, more gaslighting, more drama, more escalation of behavior. And that shows you that there's no hope.
Makes sense. Now, if you're of the, so there's the toxicer and the toxicee, right? Right. If you're the person creating the toxic environment,
Uh-huh.
how, and you're watching this today, what's the first steps for them to road of recovery or enlightenment, or to say, you know, someone's watching this to say, you know, maybe I do that unbeknownst to me, and how do I fix myself? Asking for a friend.
And what's, and it is true that there's a spectrum. So on the milder end of the spectrum, narcissistic traits are rampant throughout our culture. And they're kind of supported and encouraged in many ways in our culture. So we all have to be aware of our selfishness, our wants, needs being all about us, and all of that control and manipulation when we want what we want the way we want it. So it's important for all of us to take a look at ourselves. And I think sometimes the best way is if you have an inkling that you might have some of these traits, to just step back and ask somebody close to you how you're impacting them and what they really think and feel, and if there are ways that they can improve. And also really ask yourself, when are you being empathic and when are you not? When are you being compassionate with others and when are you not? Because those are really, I would say those are the four pillars, are the control and manipulation, compassion, and empathy.
Okay. And it sounds like being more self-aware is a big
Yeah.
step here. Okay. Now, it's not all about just toxic relationships in your sort of studies and your teaching and your background. I know you've spoken a lot about people who are anxious or upset and remedies. So there's a lot to be anxious and upset about these days. How does someone help to dig out of that?
That's a great question, Andrew. And I actually listened to one of your recent podcasts on another man's show where you were talking about meditation. And there was a recent study that came out in Medscape, which is kind of WebMD's journals, and I read those a lot. And it turns out that meditation is better than medications in terms of anxiety. So, prayer and meditation, whatever flavor that is for you, I think is one of the most important things you can do. Exercise, as you talked about, increases endorphins and kephalins and GABA, and it decreases our anxiety and depression. So, all these self care things that we've known forever are the right things to do. There's a ton of science behind it now that says that those self care strategies are what you need to focus on.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. And consistent to what I've heard from others. So it's nice to hear. Okay. So give me your number one tip that you want people to remember from today.
Whittle it down. I think one of the most important things is to notice how you talk to yourself, because a lot of our anxiety and depression actually comes from how we beat up on ourselves inside our own heads. So if you notice your self-talk and you notice that it's really toxic, then you have a toxic relationship with yourself. And until you heal that, you're not going to stand up for yourself with others either. So I
Right.
think start inside and work your way out. Self-care strategies all the way.
That makes sense. Right. And you feel better, you start acting better, you start advocating for yourself, and the domino effect sort of trickles down from there, I would imagine. Um, that's that's insightful. I really like that. All right, last question, and then I want people to know how they can contact you, so on and so forth. So since happiness is one of our big themes here, at the end of the day, what brings Shannon Petrovich happiness?
Oh, I think family, faith, friends, and I love to hike. We live in the mountains, and that's where my happy place is.
That's awesome. Mine's the beach. So you go up, I go down. Uh, so this has been awesome, Shannon. Really insightful. I know you have the book that came out on Amazon. Why don't you tell all our followers and clients where they can learn more about you, whether YouTube channel, social, your Amazon book, or your book that's on Amazon and elsewhere, I'm sure. Why don't you plug all those things? Because I think a lot of people will be interested.
Nofoggydays.com or therapisttalks.com will get you to my landing page, and you'll find the link to my book, my Therapist Talks YouTube channel. I've also jumped into TikTok recently because I found out they have 10-minute limit now instead of 30 seconds or whatever it used to be. LinkedIn, all of that stuff you can find on my landing page, nofoggydays.com.
Okay, so that's nofoggydays.com, which is the name of your book, and get to all your social stuff. We'll share that, of course, below with all of our followers, and I think they'll really like what they heard today. So, Shannon, thank you for your valuable time. I know your message is impactful and kind of feels like the right time to get it out, right? As like I said, anecdotally, I just think and you've seen it in your own practice, this is a growing need. So thank you for the important work you do, and thank you for joining us as always. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Andrea. I had a good time.
Likewise. And as always, everyone, stay wealthy, healthy, and happy. Take care.